My name is Michael Leiblein. It is my privilege as the STR Division Chair-elect to recognize Professor Dan Levinthal with a 2022 STR Distinguished Scholarship Award. This award is presented biannually to individuals that have developed a core set of ideas that fundamentally advanced research and understanding in the field of strategic management. In recognizing Professor Levinthal, the STR Awards Committee noted Dan's work on the concept of absorptive capacity and, more generally, his efforts to generate insights from foundational concepts involving behavioral and organizational learning. We're fortunate to be able to share reflections from several of Dan's colleagues on the contribution of his work as well as its ongoing importance. I hope you will enjoy these comments, and please join me and these colleagues in congratulating Dan as a 2022 STR Distinguished Scholarship Award winner.
I wanted to say a few words about my good friend and colleague, Dan Levinthal, on the occasion of his receiving the STR Division Distinguished Scholar Award. I've known Dan for many years, since I was on the faculty at Wharton in the 1990s. One thing that some of you may not know about Dan is that he loves to chat about research. When we were colleagues at Wharton, I was fortunate that Dan's office was 2 doors down from mine. I would often mosey over there whenever something occurred to me about research because I wanted to find out what Dan thought, because of something I had read or heard in a seminar or was just curious about. Dan would always be happy to talk. He would lean back in his chair and put his feet up on his desk and we'd chat. These were wonderful conversations. I always came away with a new way of thinking about a subject. These were some of my favorite times as a professor, not only at Wharton, but in my entire career. Dan has a remarkable ability to bring together so many subjects related to evolutionary theory and the behavioral theory of the firm more broadly, ranging from organizational ecology to organizational learning and absorptive capacity, to technological evolution, to organizational design and cognition, and to the NK models that he pioneered in strategy research. Thanks, Dan, for your research that has influenced us all to think more deeply and broadly, especially about all things evolutionary.
I could spend a lot of time talking about Dan's enormous impact on me and others of my vintage as a mentor, as a role model, as a teacher. But I'm going to reserve all that for his retirement party, which I'm hoping is a very long way off yet, and focus instead on some of his main ideas and seminal contributions to our field, which have shaped my thinking enormously, and I'm sure is true for many, many other scholars in our field as well. The first of these is, of course, his classic paper on absorptive capacity with Wes Cohen. The brilliant idea here is really the linking of the past to the future. So what one can learn is very much conditioned on what one already knows. And that's really an explanation for the path dependence one observes in the trajectories of organizational learning and development over time. It also tells us that there might be fundamental limits to the transfer of knowledge, because in order to learn something, it is a prerequisite that you already know enough in a related domain to be able to acquire this new knowledge. So that idea has had, I think, significant impact, as you can see from the citations, on our thinking about how organizational learning and knowledge development trajectories evolve over time. The second big idea that I want to highlight is a piece with James March on the myopia of learning. And I think this idea is profound because too often we seem to equate learning with an improvement in performance. But that piece really takes us back to a much more basic and fundamental understanding of learning as essentially just a change in behavior or beliefs as a consequence of experience, which implies that learning is not an infallible path to superior performance. In fact, there are well-known traps to learning, hence the title of the paper, The Myopia of Learning, which include things like the tendency to converge too rapidly on something that one has learned, to overgeneralize, to perhaps engage in superstitious learning. So these are ideas which have, I think, now become quite mainstream, but this paper really put those ideas together for the first time, I think, in a very clear and powerful manner. The third big idea, of course, was to his 1997 paper on adaptation on rugged landscapes. Now, of course, the modeling platform that he introduced, borrowing from Stuart Kaufman, has been enormously generative and it's become like a workhorse for modelers in organizational science. But beyond that, I want to highlight the profound nature of the idea that was introduced in that paper by pointing to a particular class of learning problems, which are search problems. Now, search is a particular kind of learning problem where the alternatives that we are trying to learn about are not given a priori, but must be discovered. And there's again a very interesting form of path dependence here, which is that the set of alternatives that one might be able to discover at any point in time is very contingent on the alternatives one tried out in the recent past. So this is really captured in the models through the idea of local search combined with the ruggedness of the task environment, the payoff landscape. But those combinations of ideas, again, help to explain why there might be such a heterogeneity of outcomes between organizations or learners or any systems for that matter, which are ostensibly in the same task environment, right? But because they have different starting points, they may well end up in very different locations. So at a very broad level, I think all three ideas I've picked, absorptive capacity, the myopia of learning, local search, and rugged landscapes, they go towards explaining why there is so much heterogeneity in organizations and why organizations might have such different trajectories of development, even though, again, ostensibly they are in the same task environment. And of course, heterogeneity across organizations is the basic premise and a staple item for those of us who study strategy.
Well, anybody who's worked with Dan knows that when you talk shop with him, even in the most average of the conversations that you have with him, sooner or later he's going to hit you with something that he throws at you from left field, and sometimes there is nothing there, but many other times he hits you with what I would call blinding insights, things that only Dan can see. And the reason I'm saying that is that when I think about Dan's entire body of research, I see a succession of these insights, of these blinding insights, things that he could only see, that one after the other kind of push the frontier. You could take any of his papers, take, for example, Adaptation or Rugged Landscapes. Well, NK model had been in biology for a long time, one way or another, before Dan's paper, and yet it took Dan's vision and intuition to understand the importance that they could have in our conversation, and also his ability to domesticate them and bring them into our conversation. So, so Dan is a visionary. In fact, I would say that he's one of the very few visionaries, one of the very few, non-normal scientists, for lack of a better word, in our field. And being interested in foresight myself, I often wonder about what Dan's killer app might be. And I never was able to find a satisfactory answer other than, well, Dan is Dan. He's just brilliant. He can pull that off. Until he sent me a preliminary version of his Mendelian CEO book. Well, it didn't take me long to realize that the model Dan articulates in that book brings together in a beautiful way literally every single thing that Dan had been writing up to that point. Literally every single thing. And I vividly remember while reading the book thinking, well, maybe that's Dan's killer app. In the spirit of the book, maybe Dan had a proto version of that model in his mind in the closet that he wasn't able to articulate. Maybe he wasn't even aware of it, but he could express through all of these ideas that he had, or which again in the spirit of the book could be seen as experiments from which he learned, and from which now he can crystallize this thing of beauty that is the Mendelian CEO model. Using the vernacular of the book, I guess I'm saying that Dan's killer app is maybe that he has always been his own Mendelian CEO. And if you don't get what I just said, it means that you have to read the book.
And the qualities that made him such a remarkable mentor back then, which were a willingness to really dig into ideas, even with first-year doctoral student, a openness to exploring true breadth of themes, and what I would still characterize as a profound joy in the process of discovery and collaboration, which really kind of were imprinted on me as this is how you work in our profession. I think when I look back, to me, these are the kind of the underlying meta principles that help me understand how much impact across how many different conceptual dimensions Dan has been able to bring into the strategy field. If I think about the broad headings of organizational learning and adaptation, and then I think about the different twists and turns of his work, sometimes, truly pioneering, at other times taking an established question and introducing a new dimensionality or a new conceptual structure to understanding it, whether it's learning, whether it's the matter of landscapes and competition, or how we think about resources, or how we think about demand landscapes, collaborations, real options, et cetera. I'd say that is the characteristic that I think I most seek to emulate, and I am most excited when I see others emulating. I think it's that sense of curiosity and of opening ideas that made his work so profoundly important, not just in the reading, but also in the extension of. I don't know, for those who have not seen his tremendous new book, which kind of was a great opportunity to revisit some of these themes. It was, for me, like yet again, a whole new, fresh outlook on ideas I had thought about before. And that again is the mark of true scholarship, which is the ideas that you can keep coming back to over time and still have them reveal new things year after year. So for all those reasons, as well as tremendous personal regard, I am beyond delighted that Dan is the recipient of the Distinguished Scholars Award.
Given so much of your work is predicated on the bounded rationality of human and organizational behavior, it seems to me that our field is remarkably rational in assessing the contributions of your work to strategy and organization theory. Congratulations.